Alright, next round we are on the draw again with another solid hand. Vessel, Ishkana, and Harness Lightning. Good to go. I mean, we basically just want to hit our land drops in most matchups here and cast Ishkana, especially if we're up against Blue-White Flash. Alright, and we even have the answer to Smuggler's Copter. So we draw a tune, which we do not need to cast this turn. We can easily cast it next turn, then play the land and Vessel, especially if we are Harness Lightning the Smuggler's Copter this turn, which we'll definitely do if we get the chance. And that we do. Alright, even draw Botanical Sanctum, which is great. And can fire off a tune, get the mountain so we can cast Chandra, can cast Vessel, so we're chugging along smoothly so far. Despite the reasonable start from our opponent. I mean, turn 2 Smuggler's Copter is pretty good. The Inspector wasn't on turn 1, so it wasn't the nut start. And no Gideon. Happy about that. And so you're generally thinking Spell Queller, or possibly Revolutionary Rebuff or Spell Shrivel, since a lot of the lists are playing that. So I could just Windmill Slam Marvel, but if it gets Spell Quelled, we have no way to unleash it. So I like just leading on a Vessel of Nascency. And neither of these end up getting quelled, so it could easily be a rebuff based on what happened, since the rebuff wouldn't counter the Puzzle Knot or the Vessel. And we don't even really need to activate this Vessel, since we essentially have everything we need. So here I have a decision. I could do nothing if our opponent has say Spell Shrivel. Doing nothing would be okay, but if they have Spell Shrivel and Avacyn, then they're just going to play Avacyn anyways. I could cast Aetherworks Marvel, which gets solidly punished by Spell Queller, which our opponent could easily have. They just didn't cast it on either of these. If they know what our deck is doing, if they know we're Aetherworks Marvel, then they want to save their Spell Queller for Aetherworks Marvel. And then finally, the last option, best option, just slamming Ishkana, hoping it resolves, hoping it doesn't get rebuffed. Best against Spell Queller. That's what makes it so appealing. It can't get Spell Quelled. It's also a good play against Avacyn. And our opponent presumably has Spell Queller, or just nothing. And it's possible they just had nothing, since they played 2 things here and tapped out, allowing us to go to town with Marvel. So here we just take Spawning Bed. It's the most energy. It allows us to hardcast Ulamog if we happen to draw it, and we just find a Chandra. And our opponent can't really do much. And Virtuoso is a great hit. So apparently our opponent didn't even have the Spell Queller, because they're not casting it if they do. And we're just leaving up Aetherworks Marvel to see what our opponent does, which is the sad activating of Westvale Abbey. And now we're just going to pounce, because our opponent's tapped out. Just a Virtuoso, though. And our opponent's getting close to Westvale Abbey, which isn't a huge concern. We have plenty of answers for Westvale Abbey in just chumping with Thapters until we find Ulamog, chumping with Spiders until we find Ulamog. And here I just go for spawning bed since it can't be interacted with. I could have just, well, I guess spawning bed is actually the best for activating Aethorworks Marvel, and we hit Ulamog, and yeah, that's the game. Opponent, of course, concedes with the attack on the stack. So sideboarding against blue-white is fairly tricky. You want all the flying disruption, and then the root out and natural state are good for destroying stasis snare and smuggler's copter, and the negates are also good in long games where you are able to fight in counter wars, but it's tricky to find the right balance against blue-white. They're a very difficult deck to play against because they can attack you on so many levels, and if you aren't answering them the right way, for example, if you draw root out and natural state and they don't draw smuggler's copter or stasis snare, you just have 2 dead cards and you're probably going to lose. If you draw Tears of the Valakut and Plummet, and they draw Thalia and Gideon, you're probably just going to lose. So I like to be a bit more proactive in this matchup. So I usually shave an Ulamog or an Aetherworks Marvel if I'm on the draw. It might be right to just always keep in 4 Aetherworks Marvel. It's probably right on the play. I sometimes even go down to 1 Ulamog, although I'm not sure if that's correct. If you should just be YOLOing the Marvel plan. I like to cut the puzzle knots and the tormenting voices because they do nothing, they don't interact well, and tormenting voice is just terrible if it gets countered or spell quelled. So I like siding out along these lines and siding in along these lines, this type of thing. I don't mind just not having the natural state and just relying on your flying removal to deal with Smuggler's Copter in the early game, and then root out for the stasis snare. But on the draw, I think it's probably correct to do like this. Keep the natural state to deal with fast Smuggler's Copters, rely on Ishkana a bit more, and hope you hit Ulamog off Aetherworks Marvel when you're activating it, basically. So game 2, and we are on the draw and have an excellent hand. No red, but Servant of the Conduit makes red, and we draw Ulamog, unfortunately. So here we're just going to leave up Plummet. And it's kind of disguised as a removal spell since we don't actually have red. So our opponent just goes for the Smuggler's Copter, and there is a mountain. Unfortunately, that's the problem with root out on the draw. We didn't get to use the root out on the Smuggler's Copter. We would have rather saved the Plummet and used the root out. And Evolving Wilds getting punished by Thalia, despite Collected Company not being in the format. And we're getting tempoed out by ground creatures, which, I mean, there's not really that much we can do at this point. So we activate that on upkeep. Unfortunately, we draw a Chandra that we can't cast root out, can't cast Servant because it was Reflector Maged, and Ishkana isn't even active, and even if it was, it would get punished by Thalia. So we're getting thoroughly tempoed out in a way that we are not enjoying. And there's Gideon, and we are hopelessly behind by this point, even though we did seemingly nothing wrong. I mean, we plummeted the Smuggler's Copter and cast a Servant of the Conduit. What more could we possibly do? Unfortunately, if blue-white just curves out, we just can't win. If they curve out and counter an Ishkana, we're just dead. We're just dead. And here we don't even have the option to Ishkana and have it be relevant. We are just dead. We're just dead. Alright. So game 3, I want to be a bit more proactive. And this hand is great. It's very proactive. It's actively proactive. Keep. Alright, it's a replay. I'm keeping anyways. And our opponent even mulligans, which we like to see if we're interested in winning, and we even draw Servant of the Conduit, which we also like to see. So here, opponent just passes, not playing anything, so we're afraid of negate at this point. That's why we don't want to play Aetherworks Marvel. Of course, if we play Whirler Virtuoso and it gets rebuffed, I'm going to feel pretty bad. But it looks like our opponent either had nothing or negate. And then they tap out for Reflector Mage, which is fine, because we're going to get some energy and get to resolve Aetherworks Marvel, which they might have Fragmentized, but we're happy to just resolve it now. And there's Gideon. So we're in a good spot here. We're going to be able to activate Aetherworks Marvel and hopefully kill off Gideon. So this is a crucial turn. Now I decide to start by Harness Lightning the Knight Ally to start clearing out the board and be able to activate Aetherworks Marvel. So obviously if we hit our Ulamog, which we probably have 1 in the deck or possibly 2 in the deck, we just are going to win. So we're planning for the scenario that we don't hit Ulamog and we want to hit Gideon. So Harness Lightning on the Knight Ally. I actually don't really like this play in retrospect. I think I should have led on Servant of the Conduit and just activated Aetherworks Marvel, because I can actually attack through the Knight Ally. It was appealing because I could get up to 6 mana, but dealing with the Knight Ally doesn't actually do all that much right now. So I think I should have just led on Servant of the Conduit, built up my board, and then activated Aetherworks Marvel to see what's up, and then I could Harness Lightning the Reflector Mage and attack through the Gideon if I wanted. So I don't really like this play. But let's see what's in the Aetherworks Marvel. And not a whole lot. That is incredible. So a Chandra would have been great. And obviously Ulamog would have been great. Ishkana wouldn't have even been that great. So we don't have too many amazing hits. So here the decision is between Harness Lightning and Whirler Virtuoso. And I kind of flip-flop between Harness Lightning and Whirler Virtuoso. In retrospect, I like the Harness Lightning. I feel like I made the slightly wrong decision here multiple times. Because I go for the Whirler Virtuoso, which isn't... I like clearing the board and pressuring Gideon here. But Whirler Virtuoso is fine. It gives us the most energy. Now here, again, I have another decision. And again, I feel like I don't make a great decision. So I feel like I made slightly the wrong decision 3 times this turn, unfortunately. I decide to attack with Whirler Virtuoso into Gideon. Our opponent blocks, and then I Harness Lightning the Reflector Mage for 1. Which gets me 2 energy. It gets the Reflector Mage off the board, but it doesn't deal the Gideon any damage, which is a huge problem. If we're just going to hit mediocre hits, the Gideon is actually going to keep up with us in value. I like actually better just either Harness Lightning the Reflector Mage for 3, hitting the Gideon for 2, or just casting Servant of the Conduit and not hitting it at all, but making our board bigger. So I've been making some questionable plays. But our opponent emblems Gideon, which I'm fine with. I actually don't mind that. That means our opponent's probably playing another Gideon, since they wouldn't get rid of it that easily. And so now our Whirler Virtuosos can't make it through this 3-3. So we have another seemingly good turn though here, because we can Servant after tracking and getting a clue and activate Aetherworks Marvel. So if we hit anything reasonable off this Aetherworks Marvel, if we hit Chandra, we basically win on the spot, since we can kill the Knight Ally, kill the Gideon. If we hit Harness Lightning, we basically win on the spot. Unfortunately, we hit nothing, which doesn't mean we lose on the spot, but it's a little unfortunate. We hit 2 energy, which isn't nothing, but... And here, I actually decide to hit Gideon for 2 and gain an energy by sacking a Whirler Virtuoso, which I think is slightly the right play. I kind of like this play. It allows us to slightly pressure the Gideon and keep our energy count boosted, so we're likely to activate energy or Aetherworks Marvel again next turn if we draw a land. So I like this play, even though it just kills the Whirler Virtuoso off. And I let that happen. And Reflector Mage is annoying. And we draw an Attune. So the problem is that we're shuffling our deck, which has a whole bunch of terrible cards on the bottom. And we get to activate Aetherworks Marvel, and again we hit nothing of value. Vessel is okay, since it is going to find something, but even our Ishkana is active at this point, so we don't really need Vessel. So we Ishkana and it gets Spell Shriveled, which is devastating. And now we're just behind on board by a significant margin, and out of energy. And how did this happen? Well, minor misplays and 2 whiffs on Aetherworks Marvel, essentially. But, I mean, that does happen. And we're going to get Stasis Snared and not have a board. So we have to Ishkana this turn to survive, and it actually resolves, which is going to generate a lot of energy. And we get Stasis Snared. So now we desperately need either Root Out or Ulamog. Ulamog would obviously be great. It would unlock Ishkana, kill off Gideon. But Root Out would also buy us a lot of time, or Natural State. And here we hit just a Chandra, which isn't so great. We could have used that at any point earlier. And have to go in on Aetherworks Marvel and hit Whirler Virtuoso and nothing else. We would have needed Ishkana, Root Out, Ulamog. This is unfortunately not quite enough to survive. We can make a Thopter, but we still can't survive. So a very frustrating match that we probably should have won if we had played a little bit better, and we definitely should have won if we had hit better on Aetherworks Marvel, but shows some of the intricacies of Standard and how important it is to play tight. And our opponent played tight, played well with what they had, and got rewarded with the win. And we ended up losing to, this was the Mox, and we ended up losing to Blue-White Flash 3 times, frustratingly. Very tilting, since I love this deck and think the only bad matchup is Blue-White Flash.